Now, I'm not a psychologist or a doctor or anything, but I do believe it's easier for men to wash sex off than it is for women.
Okay. Unpack that.
To participate in casual sex without it meaning anything to them.
Well, I believe the younger generation is participating. Girls, young women, are participating in casual sex more and more.
Absolutely.
Because of the landscape.
Yeah, and they've been taught that men have an advantage, and so you should think like a man in order to level the playing field. But the truth is that in our society, men don't look at women the way women look at men.
Sure. So we touched a bit on immaturity.
Yes,
I would like to share my views on it, that
okay,
you spoke about men's immaturity. And we obviously know, I think in a previous podcast, that you had a discussion on women's immaturity, because immaturity is not gender specific.
Nope.
Both men and women are called to grow in wisdom and maturity through their obedience and relationship with God. And so the Bible doesn't describe masculinity as inherently immature.
Nope.
And I think society will put men being more immature than women just based on the fact of development or growth. That girls tend to mature faster. And I'm wondering, do you think that can become an enabling excuse for young men to not mature? Because I'm expected to act this way. I'm expected not to grow up or be like a young woman 2 years older because I'm immature. And so I think we can label young men as immature and give that society kind of stain on what that is for that child or that young man. And it puts them in position not to step up.
Well, you mentioned our last session in part 1 that maturity is mentioned in 1 Corinthians 13. Okay, so the Bible connects love and maturity.
Okay.
In some ways, they're synonymous. Okay, as I mature in Christ, I grow in love.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Good.
Okay. Now, another definition of maturity is the acceptance of responsibility.
Okay.
And what we've noticed is that women mature relationally quicker than men.
Sure.
Okay. I remember my girls, when they were little, having weddings. Okay. They're 3 and 4 years old and they're having a wedding.
Sure.
And they always, my girls had a lot of Barbies, and we always had trouble getting enough black Kens. And I say, I hear that all the time. There's a shortage of black Kens, So you'd have an army man with the gun pointed in, him marrying Barbie.
Sure, sure.
But they had wedding. My son never had a wedding.
That's fair.
Okay, I never stumbled into my son's room and he was having a wedding.
Right.
It just wasn't on his radar.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. See, and so you have to know you're different in that way.
That's
okay,
right.
That women mature relationally a little quicker than men do.
Okay.
Okay, and so the landscape is not level. Okay, for women and men, and this is what women have to know.
Okay,
is that there's double standards. It's not, the landscape is not, it's not fair. Okay, to women.
That's true.
And you have to go into the world knowing this, that it's not a fair world. You're going to be judged differently. I'm sure men came up with the term body count, not women.
Probably.
Because it means a lot more to a man.
Sure.
Okay. Now, I'm not a psychologist or a doctor or anything, but I do believe it's easier for men to wash sex off than it is for women.
Okay. Unpack that.
To participate in casual sex without it meaning anything to them.
Well, I believe the younger generation is participating. Girls, young women, are participating in casual sex more and more.
Absolutely.
Because of the landscape.
Yeah, and they've been taught that men have an advantage, and so you should think like a man in order to level the playing field. But the truth is that in our society, men don't look at women the way women look at men.
Sure.
Okay, I've actually had youth and young women, young adult women in seminars before, And I say, how many of you want to marry a virgin guy? And not many raised their hand.
Wow.
They didn't want a guy who never had sex before.
Really?
That seemed to them, that means inexperienced.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, so being a virgin translates into inexperience.
Wow.
So that means you're just like the other woman he had sex with, and his experience with that woman is going to play into you because you're just like her.
Wow.
As opposed to being somebody who is unique, and he needs to learn how to make love to you. He needs to learn how to touch you. He needs to learn how to talk to you,
right,
and what you like and what you don't like.
Wow.
Play the hot cold game with you and learn about you. If that makes sense,
Yeah.
And so it's looked at very differently. Okay, I don't think of a woman as experienced if she's had a lot. If she's been promiscuous. Okay, but that's the way they think of men.
Right.
See what I'm saying? So even the women play into the game.
So I think about young people.
Yes.
Young. We're talking high school, college age. They're gonna want the one that they know has been around. Women. Yeah. So you know she do. So right. Now I'm gonna go in towards that direction.
Yeah.
And so and again, that's the piece of immaturity.
Yes.
And my pursuit is not for you. And so in the secular realm, we let the world, like kids say, life is lifing. So we let the world is worlding.
Right.
But in the kingdom world, when you have young men that have raised in the church, you've got a young teenager right now. I've got a young teenage man right now as well. Their hormones are raging. They're learning things. They're growing into this space. They're looking to date. My son came home from a track meet and he's like, "Mom, girls are a distraction." Like they are. Right. And I want him to understand, like right now, your thoughts are you're 15. A girl would be a distraction for you. And so keeping them focused and keeping him focused over the next several years until he is in pursuit of his wife. How would you advise us as parents, because this is a fatherless nation, I'm a single mom, and that these young boys may not have somebody leading them in a way of do not, protect your purity. Young men aren't hearing that message.
Absolutely. Well, see, why would a man protect his purity? What motivation when there's a value in the world on not being pure?
Right.
Okay, so what's the motivation? The motivation is still, what do you want? Okay, the more sex partners you have, the greater the chance that once you get married, you will cheat. Okay, so that's statistically proven. Okay, and so those habits, how can I say it? If I'm used to sleeping with a bunch of women, I don't get married, and that lifts. Okay, that's going to take a chance. That's going to raise the chances of me having a broken family. Sure. Okay, of me not being able to be pleased at home. If that makes sense. Okay. I'm always having comparison. Susie was this way. Sure. The other one was this way. She had this one going. The other one had this going, and I'm constantly comparing. And so now my wife is competing with my experiences. Sure. If that makes sense. So would we be responsible, and the what would be teaching young men to die to flesh? Like that's taking up your cross, right? Well, see, the thing is that we have to trust God. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Okay, we have to trust that every instruction He has for me is for my good, even though I may not see how. Right. Okay, so everything He has for me is for my good, and so the fewer sex partners I've had, the more faithful I'm going to be to the woman who's going to have my kids. Right. And so the more solid my household is going to be. Okay. That's good. And you say fewer sex partners. Like I want to change the conversation to none. Yeah. The fewest is none. Right. Right. And so the best chance you have of making it, is to have how can I say it? You can love your spouse before you meet them. That's good. If that makes sense. Yep. If you're looking to get married one day, even now, even though you don't know who you're going to marry, you can start loving them now. That's good. See, mothers have the initial lead role in raising kids. Sure. Mothers teach you love and comfort, and mothers teach you how to say yes. I believe between the ages of 10 and 13, the father should come in and take the lead role Okay, because fathers teach you identity and how to say no.
That's good.
Now, I'm not saying a woman can't teach you that, but I'm saying typically as far as parenting roles go, fathers teach you how to say no.
So
Your ability to make it in life is not based on your ability to say yes. It's based on your ability to say no.
So in a crowd of students, I see hundreds of students a week.
Right.
And talking to that crowd and a fatherless crowd. Yeah. What advice would you give to us as leaders to share with them and how to say no?
Okay. Yeah. You can have something better in the future than what you have now.
Okay.
You have what you have now because of your parents' choices.
That's good. That's true.
And you can make different choices and have a different, what kind of world do you want your kids to have? Do you want them to have the same world? Do you want them to have no father sitting up in the stands at the basketball game? Nobody showing up for you. No father at the father-daughter dance.
Sure.
You understand? You got to go with your cousin, your uncle.
Yep.
What kind of life do you want? Because your choices now improve the odds of you having what you eventually want.
Sure.
And so without a vision, people perish.
That's good.
Okay. In other words, vision is the only reason for restraint.
Okay.
Okay. You come by my house and say, Pastor, we're going to get up and run a couple miles at 5 o'clock this morning. I'm like, you must be crazy.
Right.
I'm going to be asleep at 5 o'clock. Okay. But if you come and say, if you're in shape, they're doing a pastor's marathon, and if you finish it, you get a free wing on your church.
Ooh.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You get a free gymnasium at your church.
You're motivated.
Well, now I'm motivated.
Yeah.
You come at 5, I'm stretching.
Sure.
You understand? Right. Because now I'm motivated.
Okay.
And so what I think one of the things we lack with kids now is we try to tell them to do what's right, but we don't tell them why.
Yeah. Okay.
And so it doesn't make sense to them, because when you came by my house at 5, it didn't make sense.
Sure.
Until you told me why. And so vision is what makes my restraint. Without a revelation, it says in New King James, people cast off restraint.
Yeah.
So without a vision, there's no reason for me to restrain myself if there's not a goal set.
That's good.
And so what we have to do is get young people to think, what kind of life do you want to have?
That's good.
What kind of family do you want to have? What kind of money do you want to make? Sure. Because the habits that you develop now will play into those things.
Right.
If that makes sense.
It does.
And so I think what we need to do with young people is let them be around us and see how we live, and let them know that your choices, even now, create habits, and habits determine destiny.
That's good.
Okay, your destiny will be determined by the habits you develop.
Okay.
If that makes sense,
yep.
Okay? So you want to take on the yoke. It says in Ecclesiastes, take the yoke in your youth. If you learn to eat right, to exercise right, to spend right, to relate to people right. If you learn that as a young person, it's easier when you get older. It's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, they say.
Okay.
Why? Because it's harder to learn new things once you get older.
Sure.
It's not hopeless. You still can, especially with the power of God. God can help you, but it's easier if you learn those things. And so what you tell young people is, man, you can set your course now, and you can avoid a lot of the pain of growing up by just making better choices.
That's good.
If that makes sense. And
it does. And so in talking to these young people about these choices, where we are with addressing the youth right now is wanting to talk with them about covenant, which is why I was so interested in this podcast.
The covenant thing, yeah.
And so in my search in the Word, I pulled out the covenants that God made with man. Noah, Moses, David, Abraham, and eventually Jesus' covenant with humanity.
Right.
So with that being said, I also searched out what covenants did God make with women. There were none.
Interesting, right.
Because we became an indirect covering under the man.
Right.
And so in teaching these young men, he promised women things, Hagar, Mary, there were things promised.
Right.
But covenants were only made with the men. And in teaching young people covenant, especially young men, your covenant, what we want to express to them is your covenant with God should become a priority before your pursuit of woman. So that covenant made with God then would bring that woman under that covenant with you.
Right.
Because your face is in Christ. He said, die to yourself and take up your cross.
Right.
And like you said, in regards to marriage, it's love Christ as he loved the church and laid his life down for her.
Right.
And so young people grasping that concept is kind of hard because
love your wife the way he loves the church.
Yes, love your wife.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so the concept of dying to flesh for a teenage boy or a young 20-something is not easy. But young people are motivated. I see those who are of the world who are not ready. I even had a young girl say, "I just want to have fun right now.
Right.
I'm not.
Absolutely.
I'm not ready."
She knows what she wants.
She knows what she wants.
And she's making those choices.
And she's in that bed she'll lay in.
Yeah, and the thing is, okay, what's that going to cost you later?
What's that going to cost you later?
That's the question you ask, because your choices now are going to affect how you view later.
Absolutely.
And how you live later. So yep.
And it will be a different view than if a man made the same choices.
Absolutely, because it's not
in the
fair.
worldview. It's not fair.
It's a different landscape.
It is. And so back to young men and teaching them covenant and understanding that there are covenants God made with man. And that young person who is inspired by the word, who is hungry to say, man, I really want to do this the right way.
Yeah.
What are daily tools that we could give these young people to stay focused on building that covenant with Christ?
Well, first of all, they have to define it. Okay. Covenant is the contextual framework of being a Christian, first of all.
Yeah.
And it's actually the framework for relationship.
Okay.
Okay, covenant. In other words, covenant protects you from self-interest.
That's good.
Okay. You and I are not in a formal covenant. Okay, but we live covenantally.
Sure.
Okay, I would never do anything to hurt you or your family.
Right.
You understand what I'm
likewise,
saying?
yeah,
I would never
for sure.
hurt you out of trying to help myself.
Yeah.
And that's the nature of covenant.
Sure.
Okay,
That's good.
is you can be trusted.
Right.
You could trust me around your family. You could trust me around your house.
That's right.
I'm not going to come in your house and you got to look around and see if everything's still there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so covenant is what allows us to relate to one another and build relationships and build friendships and build community. That's a covenant piece. Okay. And so covenant is what makes you civilized. Okay.
That's good.
Not eating with a fork.
That's right.
Okay. You have people who ate with their hands but kept covenant. That's good. Who are a lot more civilized than we are in this society because our word means nothing.
Right.
We have things called spin. You ask me a question and I'll put a spin on it so that you don't see the truth.
That's good.
So I can answer you without answering you. See what I'm saying? And so the power of your word is how can I can say your word and you are one.
Sure.
Okay, I'm as good as my word. Okay, and so we need to know that covenant is the context that we live in. And if you're going to be a valuable person, if you're going to be a person that has impact, you're going to have to be a covenant person.
Right.
I remember as a pastor, I wanted to go to my city and help out. So I went to the police chief and I said, man, how can I help you? I said, you have problems, I'm sure, that maybe I can help you with. Because I know I have some problems that you can help me with.
Sure.
Because I got to improve the relationship between the police and these young kids.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? And so I'm going to need your help. I can't do that without your help.
Right.
And the way I was able to develop, this was 3 police chiefs ago, okay?
Wow.
But the way I was able to develop a relationship with him is that I keep covenant. I say, I will never take something you say to me and use it against you publicly.
That's good.
Okay, you can rest with me. You can trust me. I will never be an enemy to you unless I'm forced to be.
That's good.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And if I am, you will know ahead of time. I won't show up on the news or in the paper.
Right.
Ratting you out.
Right.
Betraying you, because that's betrayal.
Right.
Betrayal might be the opposite of covenant.
Wow.
To betray somebody. That's where the Judas thing comes from.
Yep.
Okay.
Wow.
And so people have hidden motives. People have reasons they do things. Okay. If you're a good person, you are a covenant person, and you don't relate to other people out of self-interest.
That's good.
Of what it's going to do for me.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
It does.
Now, I might have something that I want from you. Okay. But I have to be open about it.
Okay.
I can't trick you into being my youth pastor.
Right.
I can't trick you into being, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay, so I there are things I want from you, Angela.
Yeah.
Okay, but I have to be clear about it.
That's right.
And not have a hidden thing that I want that I'm trying to get from you without that I don't think you'd want to give.
That's a good word.
That makes sense.
That's such a good word.
And so when we live by covenant, it sets us up to have healthy relationships. Okay, covenant is the context of Christianity. That's why God can ask me for anything. That's why I can ask him for anything. Because in covenant, what one has, in a blood covenant, what one has, the other one has.
That's good.
Okay, and so I had sin, and through covenant, he became sin with my sin. I become righteous with his righteousness.
That's good.
And so marriage is a beautiful example of the church. Okay.
Yes.
And how do you get married? Just by saying I do.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
You say I do, and now you're in covenant, and everything that one person has, the other one has a right to.
That's good.
Which is the root word of righteousness.
Okay.
Okay. Righteousness means I have rights. I have access. Okay. So as a righteous Christian, as a born again Christian, I was born into the family, so I have family rights. I have a right to talk to the Father. I have a right to live in the inheritance of the Father, if this makes sense,
sure.
Okay? And so covenant is how you build a life of integrity, by understanding covenant.
That's good.
And making sure that everything you touch, you make better. Okay, you don't make it cost to be around you.
Right.
Okay, lust, this is how we define love and lust. Love is the desire to benefit another at your own expense. Okay, so love doesn't mind life costing them. Okay, so in other words, covenant won't always be convenient.
That's right.
It seems like God never asked me to do something that's convenient.
Right.
It's always going to cost me, okay? Lust is the desire to benefit self at the cost of others.
Right.
Okay, and lust is never satisfied, and so you especially for women, you need to know the difference between somebody loving you and somebody lusting you.
That's good.
Because if they love you, love is easily satisfied.
That's right.
Okay, the Bible says that Jacob served Laban for Rachel, and it was for 7 years, and it was like one day. Actually, you tricked him. It was 14 years. He said, but it was like one day because he loved her so much. And so when I love you, the cost doesn't seem prohibitive, okay? But when I'm lusting you, I don't want nothing to cost me.
Right.
So I want it tonight. I just bought dinner. I want sex tonight.
Sure.
Well, no, I'm not giving you sex tonight. Well, I paid. What was I paying for? You paying for food. If you weren't hungry, you shouldn't eat. You shouldn't have eaten. If you didn't want to pay for my food, you shouldn't have invited me out.
That's true.
This is making sense. But women are compromising that kind of stuff. Okay, and it keeps men immature. It keeps men from growing up. See, and so women are not responsible for maturing men. Okay, but if you don't hold them accountable, it delays their maturity.
That's good.
If that makes sense.
That's
okay?
clarity. Yeah.
Well, what's the benefit? What do I get from buying you dinner? You got to spend 2 hours with me.
That's right.
You got to drink from my beauty.
That's
you got
good.
my presence. What do we get from God? Stuff or presence? We get both. The stuff eventually, but first we get his presence.
That's good.
If that makes sense. So I want to be in your presence.
Okay.
And dinner is a good excuse. That's why I paid for dinner.
That's good.
If that makes sense.
Yes.
See, but a lot of that has to do with how you value yourself. Okay. Do you value your presence? Do you value somebody having the time to talk with you and conversate with you? If that's no value, then you got to find something else to give them. But what I hate as a girl dad, okay, is the way women's value is broken down.
Yeah.
By society,
Sure.
by men, and that they actually cooperate with it. If that makes sense, they actually cooperate with their own devaluing.
Sure.
And that's what I'm trying to stop, is the cooperation.
Well, we're trying to break that mold too, because the next generation, there's indoctrination on all levels in all ways.
Absolutely.
But when you can get a group of young people that you can change the paradigm, you can really teach them the lies behind what's been taught.
Right.
It changes the dynamics of how they will move forward in their decision making. So to sit in the presence of young men that are saying, Miss Angela, I want to wait.
Yeah. Wow,
I don't want to be out here
Yeah.
with these body counts.
Yeah.
And sharing covenant and how to break that down to the understanding for a youth, that's going to help me, because I will play this back. And I think the wisdom in that and them learning what that truly means puts them in position to see Jesus stand as Jesus did with the woman at the well.
Right.
To say, I'm not going to pursue her. I'm going to teach her that she doesn't have to be thirsty anymore.
Right. See, you can't have a free society without covenant.
That's good.
Okay, when I go into a restaurant, I'm trusting that they didn't put anything in my food.
That's true.
I'm trusting my doctor. I'm trusting my pharmacist. Okay, and what's so funny is that we diminish covenant, but we have a more trusting society than we ever have.
Right.
We get in cars with strange people.
Yeah.
We go into houses of strange people, Airbnb. Yeah. We let strange people deliver our food, pick up our food, and it's in the car with them, next to them,
so true.
And drop it off to us, and we eat it. And I'm like, I'm not from that age, and I'm like, man, that don't make sense to me. I don't want nobody bringing me my food.
Sure.
I don't like dogs. I don't know what's in the car with you.
That's true.
And so, but covenant is life is built on it. A free society is built on the fact that I will acknowledge certain boundaries.
That's good.
I won't harm you. I won't be a danger to you. I'll be a blessing to you.
That's
if that
so
makes
good.
sense.
It does. So there's another thing you mentioned in the previous podcast that I brought up. You said a man is drawn to a woman for one of two reasons.
Right.
He either wants something from her or he wants her.
Right.
And so is this a Christian male view, or should we be looking to teach men what they can give and looking for a woman or in pursuit of a woman?
Well, I don't believe you're ever going to diminish the power of attraction.
Okay.
And what I'm attracted.
The visual.
Yeah. And so what I need to know is what is it I'm attracted to? If that makes sense. Okay. If I'm attracted to a woman, every woman is different. Every woman is unique.
Sure. Okay.
And uniqueness is of value among women. If I show up at a function with the exact same suit as another guy, it doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah.
But if you spend all these hours as a woman getting ready,
oh, I know,
and you show up at an event, you purchase your outfit, and then somebody has the exact same outfit, that's a violation of your uniqueness.
Right.
And I'll see pictures of two women in the same dress, and they say, who wore it better? You ever seen that?
Yeah.
Who wore it better? Sure. I never see that with men.
Yeah.
Who wore this suit? A man in a suit. Who cares?
Yeah.
But they always keep women in that competition, and so your uniqueness is your strength. Your strength is not in your likeness of other people. It's in your difference from other people.
Okay.
Is that I can only get you from you.
That's right.
Okay?
That's good.
And if a person wants you, that's your strength. If they just want something, you don't have a strength. Because more than half the people on earth have it.
That's good.
If that makes sense. And so I think you have to be willing to be without.
Okay.
And you have to be willing to face the truth. Okay, you have to be willing to test things.
Sure.
Okay, if I say no to this guy, will he leave me? Well, if he will, you never had him in the first place.
That's right.
He's leaving, waiting to happen. Okay, because he wants something from you. He's not interested in your values and what you want. If that makes sense. Okay, sure. And so we have to be willing to live with the reality of our circumstances.
Gotcha.
Okay, so when I test things, I find out the truth, and it may disappoint me. Okay, but I'd rather have the illusion broken than to live in an illusion and have it broken when I have more invested.
That's good.
Okay, disillusionment is a bad word in our society, but it's actually healthy.
Sure.
It means the destruction of a lie.
That's right.
Okay, so when I believe something about you that's not true, and you show me your true self, now I become disillusioned. I become free from the lie that I believed.
That's good.
And I won't lean on you and trust in you anymore. I mean, when I sat down in this chair, I didn't test it.
Right.
Okay, and because I trusted, if it had been broken, my fall would have been great. Because I'm totally in. I'm all in. I'm leaning into the chair as opposed to
Sure.
Seeing
sure.
how can it handle my weight? Does that make sense? And so with relationships, you don't want to go all in until you know how much weight they can carry.
Ooh, that's so good.
And so one of the examples I use of maturity is the ability to carry weight. Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's physical weight, that I can pick up as a man because I have muscles, and then there's emotional weight.
Okay.
Well, relationships are weighty. Relationships are heavy. That's why you shouldn't get in them too young, because of the weight of the relationship. And so what I tell some girls, I say, you were brokenhearted because you had a 3-year-old trying to carry an 18-year-old's weight. Because men mature slower on the inside than they do on the outside. So you can have all these muscles but not be able to handle responsibility, the weight of responsibility. And immature men call responsibility pressure.